listening to America's Web Radio. And now time for the Classic Car Show with Steve Rinaldo and Jim Weber.
Good morning and welcome to America's Web Radio and the Classic Car Show. We're doing a little different today. We like to sort of stir the pot up and do different things, and want to remind everybody that we have a new program called the Patreon program, and you can become a patron with by going to our web page, our home page, and you can see that there's a thing that says become a patron, and you can do it. And we want to thank the folks that have. It's been the response has been very good, and you can become a patron, get newsletters, other things that we're going to be doing in the near future by pledging $5 a month, $10, whatever you want to do. You can, and whatever you can afford. You can either become a patron of a specific show, and you will have direct contact with that host, or you can become a patron of the station and again express your opinion, and we'll be glad to be sending you some things, and we're going to have fun out of the whole deal, and that's what's important. And also want to remind everybody to go to YouTube and sign up as a subscriber to our YouTube channel, America's Web Radio. And we have, I tell you what, I've never had this happen before, but I had a gentleman out of the clear blue sky call me and thank me for the shows that we do. And I about dropped the phone. In 15 years, I've never had that happen.
Usually you get the other call.
Yeah, no. We've been very fortunate. I haven't gotten any bad calls. I've just never gotten one that, and he went into detail. That was what was just, thanking me is one thing, but then he went into details about some of the shows that we've done and why he specifically happened to like this show or that show. And he got onto our David's Pick, which is actually now turned into the Georgia Military Veterans Hall of Fame hour. And he said, I saw I first started off, he said, he had seen the show that we did with General Richard Dix, and he said, I couldn't believe what I was, and how good it was. And he said, I sat there all day watching every show that you all had done with one of the veterans. And so he spent about 8 hours of watching the America's Web Radio YouTube channel. So we do appreciate it, and we're getting more and more of those calls. And I want to remind everybody that, our First Lady has brought dignity and class back to the White House again, and elegance. And I don't know how many people now, I know that it's gone over very well, but we're sending thank you notes to her. And it's, from what we've had in the recent past, she has, again, the White House, our house, is again elegant, dignified, and has class. So send your thank you notes. This weekend would be a good day to do it, a good weekend to do it. Anyway, we're about to get started with the Classic Car Show. We're going to do something a little different. The topic today, and I'm basically going to turn it over to Steve and Jim, because I've never even been to a car auction, but we're going to talk about auctions, and specifically classic cars or vintage cars. And one of the questions, both Steve and Jim have been judges in all areas of cars, basically. So when you get ready to sell, is the auction the way to go? Oh, wait a second. Before we do that, Steve is in need.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. But I want to say one thing about patrons. Steve can be the patron saint of our show. How's that?
So, yeah. I don't think that's an option.
Anyway, what do you need, Steve?
Well, anyway, I just sort of maybe I can get some help from some of you guys. my 1909 Maxwell, the guys that are building the engine are two of the best in the business, and you have to have all these special tools and stuff for these real oak. And I, of course, don't have anything for that era of car, the O series car, and this is a 1909 Maxwell Model A. They got the engine together, and internally it's got a new crankshaft that was made, new rods, new pistons, new cam, new everything internally is new. They got it up, started going, took it down for a little test ride, and it's called a crankcase, cracked. And according to these guys, it's unrepairable. And one of the things I found out, and I didn't know this at all, it's an aluminum alloy crankcase. And back in the day, there were different grades of this aluminum stuff. And a cheap car like this, Maxwell, was one of the cheapest things you could buy in the O's, a little two-cylinder car. Because of the aluminum alloy that was used, it's extremely weak and very porous, but it's easy to work with. And with this stuff being so porous, what happens is that the parts that are made with this stuff, basically the crankcase, absorbs oil, and you can't get it out. If you do, it's a very tedious and long process. So, according to the guys doing this, and I trust these guys, and they're, like I said, they're some of the best in the business, and I've known these guys for years. They're recommending that I find a new crankcase. So, my question and hope for anybody, I've been online, I'm talking to people all over the world, a guy in the Netherlands, a guy in Australia, trying to find one of these, and so far nothing has materialized. If any of you know somebody with an old Maxwell, this is a two-cylinder car. They started making this engine in 1907. And they had Model A's, which are mine. In 10, they had AA. They had an AB in 11. And I think there was a C and a D, but I'm not 100% sure. And then they made a Messenger. All of these parts are 100% interchangeable. There are slight differences in these cars from like a battery and a magneto ignition and bigger jugs and bigger pistons. So anyway, it's becoming quite a challenge to try to find one of these. And I was hoping, well, maybe somebody out there says, yeah, you know, this guy in our local region might have one.
Or Grandpa had one in the barn.
Yeah, I had one in the barn, you know, and if I have to, the crankcase is good, I'd buy the whole car and part out what's left, just sell it. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I'd like to get this car running. They said it works, it runs, it moves, but it leaks oil pretty severely. And a couple of the guys on my posts have put in that they think they could fix it by stitching a block. Mm-hmm. And I know somewhat about this, and what that means is they put pins in the block, and then they do like giant staples. They weld it first, and then put big they pin the block, then they weld it, from what I understand, and then put staples in.
Yeah, that was a very popular repair in the UK with the vintage cars in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah, so they're saying that this is a possibility. If I do this, I take a chance, and I've got a lot of money tied up in the internal, so if that block lets go, all of that's going to be destroyed.
Yeah.
The thing is to either fix this or look for another one. And these guys are all recommended. The other possibility, which is even goofier, is to have the engine block cast, make new ones.
Yeah.
With the CNC stuff, it's not that bad. The initial cost I've had estimates from $3,000 to $10,000 to make the crankcase.
Yeah, Steve, I've got to ask, is there any chance in the world that with what they're doing today with the CAD systems,
that's what we're talking about, making a new one.
Make a new one, yeah.
Make a new one.
Okay, is it where
the 3D printing, you mean?
Yeah, there is. That's what we're talking about. You make the mold on the 3D printer, and then you cast new blocks. Now, if enough guys are interested, if these things are this rare, and there's a ton of these cars around, and according to what I found out, this is not an uncommon problem due to the quality of the alloy that these were made with back in the day. If I could get enough interest together, say I could find 10 guys that want to do this, want an extra block, they really want they've made hundreds and thousands of these stupid Maxwells.
So you'd only be making the case. You wouldn't. The parts that you got would work in.
Oh yeah, they're all interchangeable, all the way up to like 15 or 16 or something like that. But anyway, if I get enough guys to do this, and we could get a few cases made, and it would become economically feasible to do this, and you have this made out of aircraft aluminum.
Yeah.
Because they make out of engines for airplanes, are using aluminum cases because of the weight.
Yeah.
And cars. So they have high quality. It's not the same junk that was back in the past.
No.
So if I buy a used one from somebody, which is the easiest way out, you're still using over 100-year-old equipment.
And you run the same challenge.
The same risk.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an interesting thing. It's kind of frustrating. I didn't think it would be that hard, but I sure learned my lesson, excuse me, on this stuff. If you're going to get involved in a project, Uncle Fred died and Aunt Wilma has this old car in the barn, and it's a Coulter, and you get involved in something like this, it's not just the initial cost, it's finding stuff. So a Maxwell is not an odd car, but it's odd enough where it's not like a Model T or a Model A or a Chevy or a Plymouth. I sure learned my lesson on this stuff, Buick, that if I'm going to do anything, it's going to, the first thing to do is find out about parts availability, because you're sure as hell going to need them.
Yep.
So anyway, I just thought I might throw this out and see if anybody has any suggestions.
We're going to take a break right quick and come back. But when we do, during the break, I want to talk to you about videoing when you do it, and I think it's an incredible idea, and something like you said, it's needed. We'll be back right after this.
Best coverage for your classic car? Consider J.C. Taylor Insurance. I've been my insurer for years in this hobby and have the top rating of all of the insurance companies in the hobby. When you get ready for insurance, call J.C. Taylor or visit jctaylor.com on the internet.
This is America's Web Radio. Would you like to have a show, talk about your business, or express your opinion on America's Web Radio? Just email gm@americaswebradio.com and we'll get back to you. Thank you.
Whether cruising the strip in a 57 Chevy or taking the family on a vacation in a 71 Oldsmobile Vista Cruiser, You need to tune in to Classic Cars with Steve Rinaldo and Jim Weber every Saturday from 8 to 9 a.m. on americaswebradio.com.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the americasbroadcastnetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
And we're back on America's Web Radio and the Classic Car Show, and we're going to talk auctions, but first, I think this is fascinating what you're talking about with your Maxwell and needing the repair, needing a new engine block, basically.
Yeah. I've been corrected by everybody. I said engine block. That's small. That's old hot rod talk. It's called a crankcase. It's not an engine block. It's a crankcase.
Yeah. And a small block Chevy won't fit in this Maxwell.
But anyway, no. But anyway, Jim had an idea, and I think it might be. I think I'm going to do it this week. Jay Leno has a big, what do they call it? Printer.
Yeah. 3D
printer, and I'll call Jay Leno, and he's, of course, probably one of the best connected people that there is in the hobby because of the stuff he does, and see if he has one, if he knows somebody else with a commercial one that I could get to make the original block and then have it cast. Because this guy, one of the guys working on this years ago, had two-cylinder Rio engine crankcases made. And it was $10,000 back then because it was done by hand.
Yeah.
And very intensive. And he had 20 made and sold them. But now with the computer stuff, you put this thing in and out it comes.
And you put it, and then any CNC work that needs to be done, it's
on a tape and it's there.
Yeah. But I want to just say something to our listeners. First of all, this car is a show car, and it's an AA Grand National winner. And on top of that, Steve went to the people, Moldex in Detroit, and they're the people that make crankshafts that basically, I think, the best in the country. Marine Crank's another one in Anaheim. But my point is, you have done everything first class on this engine.
And I don't want to lose it if this block lets go.
Yeah. So,
okay, what happens if you were to take it to a show and you had the 3D new?
Yeah.
So that would eliminate it from being an original.
No, it would be nobody would ever know the difference.
I'll tell. No.
Yeah.
Nobody, you couldn't tell. When it comes out of those, I've seen other parts done. You can't tell.
So can you call it original parts?
Yeah. It's a reproduction of this original engine, this original part. But the cheapest way, of course, is to find a crankcase that's serviceable.
Yeah. But then you run the risk.
It's the same thing. And see, one of the things with all my cars, I'm not a show car guy. If it doesn't go, it doesn't move, what the hell good is it? These people that have, 200 cars in their collection and they haven't moved in 20 years, why don't you just buy a damn painting and hang it on the wall? I mean, what good is it? It doesn't, that's what museums are for. But I don't get it. It's a car. It was made to go. I don't care if it's that $60 million GTO. It's an automobile. It was made to go.
Well, but the thing that our listeners, I think, know is you go on tours. You drive
I drive
cars.
them. That's what it's for.
Yeah.
And so that even that's a consideration. That's part of the equation about getting a new block made with the new high strength aluminum. I mean, every engine in the world now is aluminum engine block, I think. I don't think there's any cast iron anymore, is there?
Well, Chevys, some of the Chevy production engines, the Corvettes aren't, but but it makes sense. I mean, they're even making beer cans out of aluminum now. So,
Speaking of Corvettes real quick, just a thing. I look at automotive news every day because it's kind of fun to keep up with the thing. Chevrolet they are experimenting with an all-wheel drive Corvette. They showed a prototype of it.
That's shocking.
That's really shocking. But wouldn't that be something?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I could hear all of the Corvette people whining about that thing.
Well, they'd have to play a tape with the engine noise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be, yeah, well, that's what
Well,
they
anyway,
yeah.
going back to your Maxwell, if any of our listeners know Jay Leno, somebody mentioned it too. Steve needs some help on this, and we'd appreciate it. And I know.
Well, it's where, I mean, he's a nice guy because he
Yeah.
did our technician. I mean, he wouldn't remember me from Adam, but
He did our dealer show once.
He did our dealer show.
Everybody knows Steve Rinaldo.
Well, but
Well, not quite.
but he's a very nice guy, and he's a true car guy.
Yeah.
And he's a hands-on car guy. He's not one of these, just because I have lots of money, I can buy this. He's in the shop working with the guys on stuff.
Yep.
So it's a good thought. So what's an email?
Yeah. Well, and the other thing,
Well, you can tell me you have something in common. You've both been in the media.
This is the medium.
media. Why don't you put an ad in Wes Peterson's Antique Automobile too?
Well, I've got one right now on the website. I'm gonna do some for Horseless Carriage,
Good.
and I'm gonna do Hemmings.
Yeah. Okay. right,
Let's
so
see what happens.
Yeah, you got it covered. But the car's worth doing.
Yeah, I think so.
You
And
may be upside down in it, but it's worth doing
Yeah.
from the simple fact that
Well, if I run short, I can go out and. Oh, I hate to become a sex slave again. but
really?
yeah, I hate to do it.
Yeah, but look, all those women are older than you are, so
They'll forget real fast.
yeah. And he's almost
They
too
may
old
not
to be a
remember when to
gigolo.
show up.
True. Cash ahead.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, let's talk. It's auction season.
Boy, is it ever.
And the Bullet Mustang, Steve McQueen's unrestored car, went $3.4 million.
Wow.
How many of them are there?
Yeah, well, I don't. There's supposedly 2.
Didn't we talk about that and what they'd done to the front end?
But they did a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and they had camera mounts and stuff on
And
it.
they had
This car's
special
valid.
seats, so he couldn't
Yeah.
hurt himself when he went over those jumps. The seats were on suspension.
Well, I'm not sure he did the jumps. I think Bud Elkins did them.
Well, I don't know,
One
but-
of his.
But anyway,
Yeah.
so whoever was driving couldn't
Yeah.
hurt themselves. There was a lot of things done
but
to these cars.
this car is bona fide, for lack of a better way of putting it.
Certified.
Yeah, bona fide, whatever. So that auction is in Kissimmee, Florida now. And next week we start with Steve's favorites.
Bear Jackson.
Barry
BJ.
Jackson.
Well,
Yeah.
but they do serve a purpose.
Yeah.
I'm just not a big fan of this
Yeah,
stuff.
Scottsdale, I mean, that's the place to be.
Next week, yeah.
Yeah, because Worldwide's out there, and Bonhams is out
R&M
there.
is out there.
R&M Sotheby's.
Sotheby's.
Yes,
right,
is
right.
out there.
Now, I agree with you, Steve, on Barrett Jackson, but at the same token, we ought to give the devil his due. Barrett Jackson has brought a lot of attention
To the old car hobby.
Well, yeah,
exactly.
The TV.
And look
so-
at all the auction companies. And
Yeah.
the other one's Russo and Steel, which I guess is now RS. And then they go over to Amelia Island in March.
And there's 4 or 5 of them there.
Yeah, and then you got the online Bring a Trailer guys and
And,
Gooding
and
Company.
and eBay and all this stuff.
Yeah.
They do serve a purpose. If you have like I know a lot of people that do this. This is honestly, and everybody here, but it doesn't matter. This is a male-dominated hobby. Men die before their wives, and all of a sudden they've got 10, 20, 18 cars in the garage, and Linda doesn't know what the hell to do with them. And this is an easy way out.
Mm-hmm.
This is
Yes.
a very simple, easy, non-effort, and if they're highly desirable cars, people like Barrett Jackson, people like R&M will take care of getting the cars, having them serviced, having them cleaned up, so you don't have to do a thing.
Yes.
and they just go away. But the other side of that,
Another easy thing to do, and we'll put this out to all the widows that have the 18 cars or even 5 or 6. They can just donate them to America's Web Radio.
Well, just call David.
Yeah.
but yeah. But anyway, I've had the other downside of doing it this way with these people is they are at no reserve. They don't do this if you're going to put a reserve on them. They want them sold. So, and sometimes I can tell you, one of my best buddies took 2 cars to Hershey a couple of years ago, a beautiful 1931 Cadillac. I can't remember if it was a V12 or V16 Roadster, just gorgeous. And then his 12 Everett touring car. Everett was one of the main players back in the real early days of cars. And he was involved in several things. One of the famous ones was EMF, Everett, Metzger, and Flanders. But anyway, these cars were both anticipated to get 120 plus. The EMF only brought 55, and the Cadillac only brought 85. Approximately, I can't remember exactly, but they're no reserve. So that's the downside. To me, Barrett Jackson. Well, let's just pick Barrett Jackson. They're the biggest. They're the most famous. For the most part, Barrett Jackson doesn't do classic cars. Very few. You can watch that for all those 3 days, and you won't see many full. And I'm talking about restored. 100% restored classic cars.
Classic cars meaning pre-war.
Yeah, pre-war stuff. Yeah. You won't see, you'll see a few sprinkled in there, but most of them are 57 Chevy.
Tri-5s.
Yeah, Resto mods and Camaros with, 55-inch tires on the back and little dinky wheels on the front.
Or dog dish hubcap real ones.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And So anyway, they you got to pick your audience if you're going to do auctions. You really got to pick the auction that fits what you're trying to sell.
Yeah, and you know who's good at that is Carini, chasing classic.
Oh yeah,
cars.
yeah. He knows the game.
He does.
He knows the game.
He knows whether to go to Pebble or whether to go to Amelia or to go to Scottsdale.
And there are consultants. Out there that this is their job.
Yeah.
I guess David's going to take a break.
We're going to take a break, and we'll be back talking auctions right after this.
Hi, my name is Steve Rinaldo, host of the Classic Car Show on America's Web Radio, talking to you about antique car insurance. In this hobby that I've been part of for years, not all insurance companies and insurance coverage is the same. I would suggest that you call J.C. Taylor or visit jctaylor.com to find out some information about some of the best antique car insurance you can get, such as agreed value insurance for your classic car. Again, when you get ready to insure your classic, antique, or even your street rod, call J.C. Taylor Insurance or visit jctaylor.com.
Whether cruising the strip in a 57 Chevy or taking the family on a vacation in a 71 Oldsmobile Vista Cruiser, you need to tune in to Classic Cars with Steve Rinaldo and Jim Weber every Saturday from 8 to 9 a.m. on americaswebradio.com.
This is America's Web Radio. Would you like to have a show, talk about your business, or express your opinion on America's Web Radio? Just email gm@americaswebradio.com and we'll get back to you. Thank you. And we're back on the Classic Car Show. Steve Rinaldo and Jim Weber at the round table talking auctions.
You know, one other thing I remember back when Pat Braden was alive, and he went over to I believe it was a Barrett Jackson, but don't hold me to it.
The Alpha story?
Yeah.
I went with him to
Yeah,
that. I
yeah.
went with him to that story.
Yeah.
To that car.
Yeah, and they were able to verify that it was not
the car. Yeah. This is kind of a weird thing too. And it's not just auctions, it's all over. There were how many 62 Corvette fuel injection cars made? Not many considered.
Yeah, but there's too many of the not many.
Yeah, there's a hell of a lot more of them that were ever made. And so when you and to me, that's one of the issues. Now, the big companies like Barrett Jackson, I'll give them their due. They verify everything. They can't, at their level of playing this game, they can't afford to misrepresent anything.
Well, any of them. RM is the same way. RM Sotheby's, but getting the whole bunch of them, because you'll see some cars presented and then poof, they're gone.
Yeah. Because, well, this kind of story that we were talking about, this good friend of ours, he was like Mr. Italian Car in the United States. He, 21 books?
No, 8 or 9, but he wrote a Daytona book.
Yeah, a bunch of stuff. Yeah, but I mean a bunch of stuff. Yeah. And he was very famous, and he got invited to cover for this, right?
Yeah, Barrett Jackson.
Yeah, Sports Car Marketplace. Wasn't that who sent him?
He wrote for them.
Yeah.
I'm not sure who sent him.
I think so.
But I couldn't go, and you went.
Yeah, and I was working for Honda at the time, and he said, "Do you want to go to Barrett Jackson?" I had never been, and he said, "There's an Alfa Romeo that's going to go for sale, some kind of it." And I don't know anything about these weird, our buddy in Philadelphia would know for
Dr.
sure.
Fred.
Yeah, Fred would know for sure. Well, anyway, they got out there, and just before we got there, somebody got the catalog and saw this car was for sale and threatened to sue them if they auctioned this car because he had the real car. And the story was that the car had been separated. One guy had this bunch of parts, the other guy had this bunch of parts, and they recreated 2 identical cars. So who had the real car? And Pat called me and said, can you get AACA, Horseless Carriage Classic Car Club, to define what is an automobile? And this keeps coming up every now and then. And none of the big clubs would touch this. Yeah. They wouldn't touch it. And I can't blame them, because if you stick your neck out and say that this is the car, the engine and frame is the car. No, the body and this is the car.
The transaction.
Yeah, who knows? And nobody will touch it. And I can't blame them. So bottom line is, we went out there and this car never went to auction.
Yeah.
The one that was supposed to be there never went. And and this is a long time ago. And Barrett Jackson was nothing then like it is now. I mean, this is a major event. This is not just
and the other thing today is, and we've interviewed one of the lawyers, a lawyer in Philadelphia, about validating cars and lineage, but Sports Car Market's got their own column that they run on issues with cars.
Yes.
Especially 12-cylinder Ferraris.
Oh, I can imagine now their value.
Yeah, and HC Alphas, and it's just like Pat had an HC 2300 Alpha, a long wheelbase car, Cortolungo, and then it was shortened with a different body, and now it's a Monza, because a Monza is so much more valuable, which is basically a race car.
What is this thing?
Yeah.
What is it?
It's an HC 2300 Alpha.
Well, when it goes for sale, what's it going to be?
A Monza, but we know who did it. And there's the
if they have the documentation and present it with that, I have no problem with that.
That you can do.
That if they have it's like at Hershey that time when that Bugatti with the big fin showed up, and I was the team captain. One of those weird looking Bugatti coupes with the big fin in the back. I don't know what it's called. And it was another cut car, and they presented the car to me. Whoa, and this is a long time ago, and somebody was there trying to buy it, and he said, "I'm not even going to call California until you get to $1.5 million. That's where we start."
Yeah.
and he had the history. This car had been rebodied and done but they had the book in the history of
Yep.
this
I know.
whole car.
Yeah, it's a Type 51.
No idea.
Yeah.
But I just thought that was pretty cool. I'd
Mhm.
never had a car presented to me, and all these guys with matching shirts and all of this stuff.
Little
Whoa,
kid
this is
from
pretty cool.
Jamestown, New York.
Yeah, whoa, look at this. My 32 Ford Roadster with the Dodge engine in it. Let's go, buddy. But auctions do serve a purpose. I'm not a huge fan of them, and a couple of reasons why. One is, unless you are Wayne Carini or Jay Leno, you don't get to talk to the owner. It's hard to talk to the owner of the car. They're sitting, especially someplace like Barrett Jackson. Those cars are, some of those big collectors bring in 3 semi-loads of cars.
Well, look when John Staluppi sold his collection.
Yeah, when he sold the whole collection at once,
Yeah.
and I'm sure John didn't bother to talk to, but I'm sure he talked to the Wayne
Well,
Carini guys.
Yeah, but his were all muscle cars,
Yeah.
basically, and beautiful 50s
Yeah,
stuff, which
yeah,
we grew up with as kids, with $75,000 worth of chrome work to be done on
Yeah.
them today.
So you don't get to talk to the owner, and generally, you don't get to drive the car.
Yeah.
And to me, that's a big. I want to talk to the owner and find out the history. Tell me what you've done to this. What documentation do you have? You say that this was rebuilt. That was, well, where you have the records to show me that this is there, that this was. You can say anything you want to.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the big downside. But again, giving these big auction houses their due, they're pretty tight on this stuff.
Yeah, they're ethical. That's-
Mostly.
Yeah, mostly. And then you get the screwball that buys a car and has buyer's remorse and then wants to sue everybody.
Yeah.
So who
Yeah.
knows? I just, I'm not in that league.
No, I'm not either, and I've never bought or sold anything at an auction. I never have. I've been to a few, but it's just, I guess I'm just weird. I want to talk to the owner, and I want to talk to him face to face.
Yeah.
And I want some documentation, just like our friend Dr. Frank selling this Porsche. Well, he's got a 86, 87 911.
Yeah.
They aren't expensive cars. They're just not.
Well, they're up to $40,000, $50,000.
But still,
but it's not $1 million.
Yeah, but still, he's got every damn slip of paper
Yes.
that came with that car, every service, every part, everything. So this guy who buys this car knows exactly what he's getting, and that's worth a lot.
Yeah. It's an 87 or later because it's got a G50 gearbox, which makes it even more valuable.
Yeah, I have no idea Porsche stuff.
So anyway, the other thing, and I just a little humor, don't wave at anybody at an auction. I did that once and ended up with a pair of Coney shocks for a Porsche 911. And I bought,
so it only cost you $25.36.
no, $10. This was this was back in the late 60s.
And then you sold them for 50.
Certainly.
But
I don't think that an auction like VJ or any of the others that just waving your hands, they
have paddles and you pay an entry fee and you got to have a line. Well, you got a line of credit.
Yeah. You walk in. You don't play. Like the one I've gone to the most is Hershey, because I get free tickets to go to the R&M Sotheby's. And I like that little guy that used to be their auctioneer.
Yeah.
Just like that little guy. Oh,
Max,
that thing? Yeah.
That was Max Gerard.
He was really cool. Yes, 20, 22, 22, 22, 24. He was just cool.
He's got his own business now.
Oh, does he?
Yeah.
But he was just cool. But anyway, it's not cheap to play even at these auctions.
No.
In order to get the programs for these auctions are somewhere pushing $100 or
a couple
more.
Hundreds for some.
For some of them, yeah.
But
Just
they're beautiful.
just the book,
Yeah.
just the catalog. And then if you get a bidder's card, some of those things are, I can't imagine what one of the big ones at we'll say Pebble Beach, the real big one out there they have at Pebble Beach. I don't know what it would cost to even get a bidder's paddle.
I have no idea.
I'll bet it's $500
or more.
or more. Yeah,
that's out of my.
That's a whole different league. And you get a paddle, or you get a card, and that's what you raise that, unless you are Jay Leno or Wayne Carini or somebody. I mean, those guys just nod their head.
You don't get 10 free drink tickets.
Yeah, they get anything. They get all they want, all the food they want.
Yeah, Max Gerardo and Company.
I don't know who that one is.
Well, that's your buddy that you used to like at our.
Oh, yeah, he used to crack me up. He was very clever.
Well, he was a showman.
Yeah, he was very clever.
And he made you feel good.
Yeah.
After you spent $2.4 million.
Yeah, and the other well, that one, the only one I had years ago when I went with Harold and Lil Coker and was sitting with them, there was and you probably know the name better than I do, Didion Bouton.
Didion Bouton.
Yeah, and there was a guy sitting, this was the star of the show, and I was sitting with Harold and Lil, and this car came up, and it started bidding, and it started at $1 million. And anyway, it got up to like $2.5 million. I told Harold, come on, Harold, that would look great in your collection. Lil smacked me so damn hard, you keep your damn mouth shut. But anyway, the interesting thing with that auction was there was a guy sitting in front with a leather coat on, sunglasses, and a Chevy hat.
Was there a bulge in the side?
No. Oh, no. This guy came to buy this car. And a guy named Rich from Pennsylvania, they got in a two-man contest, and it got to, I think it was $8.2 million, I think. And and anyway, and he bid, the guy in front bid 8.2, and he won it, and he walked right straight through the curtain, and the car disappeared, and nobody even has any idea where the hell it is. So when you start playing in that league, you're dealing with big time worldwide collectors.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is the gentleman from the Netherlands that has the museum that buys cars. He's very professional, and he shows his cars and shares them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, point of fact, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 major auctions just in Arizona.
Next week.
Yes, starting next week. Mecum already had theirs in Kissimmee.
It ends this weekend, doesn't it?
Yes. Then they go to Las Vegas the third week in January. Bonhams goes to Las Vegas after Scottsdale. So, I mean, this month is incredible.
Yeah, and we have, I know one guy that's going to all of them. He's down in Florida now.
Mm-hmm.
He's going out to Scottsdale.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get, again, you gotta, whether you're a buyer or a seller, if you're into American muscle, custom cars, resto rods and mods and all this stuff, you go to Barrett Jackson. If you're looking for classic cars, you go to R&M Sotheby's.
I guess we just broke.
Yeah.
And we'll be back right after this.
This is Steve Rinaldo, host of the Classic Car Show on America's Web Radio. Just talking to you about antique car insurance. I think that if you're looking for the best coverage for your classic car, consider J.C. Taylor Insurance. I've been my insurer for years in this hobby and have the top rating of all of the insurance companies in the hobby. When you get ready for insurance, call J.C. Taylor or visit jctaylor.com on the internet.
Okay, folks, let's have some fun on America's Web Radio. We love idioms, and we want yours. So send it in, go into our homepage, look under the flag at the banner, and click on idioms, and send us your idiom today. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Steve Rinaldo, host of the Classic Car Show on America's Web Radio, talking to you about antique car insurance. In this hobby, that I've been part of for years. Not all insurance companies and insurance coverage is the same. I would suggest that you call J.C. Taylor or visit jctaylor.com to find out some information about some of the best antique car insurance you can get, such as agreed value insurance for your classic car. Again, when you get ready to insure your classic, antique, or even your street rod, call J.C. Taylor Insurance or visit jctaylor.com.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
And we're back on America's Web Radio and the Classic Car Show. And before we get out of here in a few minutes, want to remind everybody to keep Steve in mind and his Maxwell and the crank case. And if you know of one, or if you want to get a hold of us, and you can email GM at America's Web Radio or Steve at America's Web Radio. I believe we go right to your email address as it is too. So if not, or you can email me and I'll be sure that Steve gets it. Just David at America's Web Radio. And
And if they want Steve to be the patron saint, they can.
Be what?
Patron of the program.
Yeah. The patron saint, huh? Okay. Well, anyway, if you all want to become a patron, go to our website. And we also have some very cool things on our homepage, as well as we have started because of the military shows that we're doing now. And we're very proud to announce that we're going to be the radio station for the American Disabled Veterans. And that covers coast to coast. And we have Mike Dover on. He is the chaplain, national chaplain of America's
I've been a life member
veterans
for a long time.
Anyway, so we've got really neat programs going on here. And I would suggest, if you get a chance, go to our website, go to programs. Thursday at 10 a.m. is David's pick, my pick of who I have on. And now we're actually sort of transitioning over to that hour, making it the Georgia Military Veterans Hall of Fame hour. And we just had General Richard Dix on, and he was fantastic. He served with Storm and Norman. And then we've had Richard Wise, and we had Lee Ellis on this past week. Lee spent 5 years as a guest at the Hanoi Hilton, and it'll bring you to your knees. Anyway, we got great shows going on, and it's time now to get back to the Classic Car Show with Steve and Jim.
Yeah, one of the things I would recommend anybody before you get involved in this auction stuff, whether you're a seller or a buyer, go online to Haggerty. There's a bunch. That Haggerty's a good one. There's even publications you can buy that give you suggested prices. What can you actually expect? And you don't want to be talked into stuff by some of these people. Oh, you look in the programs, and some of the prices you say, how in the hell can they expect to get that for that car? You always wonder. Or when you go, it's easy to get caught up in that stuff.
Well, it's interesting, and I'll bring up Wayne Carini again, because he's gone to some auctions, and he hasn't hit what he wants to, and he's had to lower reserves and stuff. And you see what Wayne has gone through, and that is a real education.
Yeah. And there are ways that, and the bigger auctions don't care. They are not as the smaller personal ones where you watch Wayne Carini and they'll come up to him and they'll say he had a $50,000 reserve on this 42 Oldsmobile touring car, and it got to 46, didn't make the reserve, and the auction company a lot of times, and they'll do it for everybody. They'll say, well, okay, we'll cut our commission by 50% if you'll take this. So there are other options, but at the big auctions like Barrett-Jackson, I don't know if they would be that personal.
Yeah,
I don't
I'm
know,
not that
because
familiar.
there's thousands of cars. I don't know. I mean, somebody said there's like the one in Kissimmee, they said there's close to 4,000 cars that go through that auction.
I don't know.
That's what that guy that goes to all these auctions said. He buys cars for movies.
Oh. Okay.
And in this state, because as most people know, Georgia's like number 2 after Hollywood, or maybe even more now. But there's a couple of guys that do big time supply automobiles for movies, and they have several hundred cars. So they're looking for brassier cars to be on a set, or 30s cars to be on a set, or 50s cars or 60s cars to rent, that he rents them to be on a set.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes to all these places every spring to fill out his
needs.
Yeah. And he makes a pretty good living at it, actually.
Good for him.
Yeah, and he has 2 guys that work for him.
What a fun job that would be.
Yeah.
He said it's very hard work when they film. There's no rest. It's a 12, 14-hour day getting the cars down there, because they want different ones for this. They want different ones for that. You got to move them down, take them home. And, of course, they're not their cars, so they aren't overly cautious with them either.
Have you ever had in one of yours
I've been in one movie.
with the Cadillac?
No, with the MGTD, the Natural, when it was filmed at Tech.
Yeah.
I was in my car. I wasn't in it, but my car was in the, what's his name? Bobby Jones. It was one of those golf movies, early golf movies. And they wanted a bunch of brassier cars to sit around in the beginning of the thing. So we parked our cars there.
Your T.
Yeah, the white T. Yeah.
Wow.
So, but anyway, like I said, I'm not really totally anti-auction. It's just not something that my biggest problem is not being able to find out what I need. I sort of feel I'm buying this car blind, and doing most of the work yourself. And I know people that have gotten burned, and I also know people that have made out, especially these no reserve. Hey, if you could have gotten Jack's Everett for $55,000, whoever got that car got a wonderful big brass era touring car that was right on the money.
Well, here's the other thing. People go to auctions, buy a car, and take it to the next auction and try and flip it.
Well, the auction houses buy them and flip it too.
Yeah, and that's why, and I'm just going to say Keith Martin's Sports Car Market letter talks about auctions and gives you details on each of them, but it's more sports and classics.
Yeah, it's not. He doesn't have American classics. That's all you import stuff.
He does have some muscle car. If it's a big auction, they'll go through some of that. That's a good reference.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them.
Yeah, if
prepare yourself. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Don't go into this blind as a buyer or a seller.
Well, just because Mommy had a '55 Pontiac Bonneville tri-power convertible in white with the red accent, and you want that now, and you're going to go to the auctions, be careful of the ether.
Yeah.
Ether
and yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I guess sort of the bottom line of what y'all are saying is not only buyer beware, but also seller.
And another thing people don't know about auctions is, say we'll pick Barrett-Jackson. It starts on Thursday. You bring a car and you get a slot on Thursday, but you want it on Saturday in prime time. It costs you a whole lot more. And if you've watched TV, as the night goes on, the audience starts leaving after supper time. So 7, 8 o'clock, that's what got Jack. His cars were some of the last 10 that went through at Hershey, and there couldn't have been 25 people in the bidders in the deal.
But if you're bidding for a car and you see something, you might get a buy
at the beginning or the very end.
Yeah.
The very end. So that's another thing to think about.
I don't know if we were talking auctions or something, but I think you were telling, or we were talking Hershey one time, and you know that you have obviously you can't be at the auction without the financing, or you've been approved, you've got a line of credit or whatever.
Yep.
But what are you doing? And I think you told me, and I can't remember, that on the titling.
There are people there. They take care of it. It's all, you don't have to even, you don't even have to walk out. If you get the catalog and you go over to Hershey Lodge and you see this 31K Lincoln Roadster that you really want.
Okay, it's titled in Nevada.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. And you didn't get a line of credit, and you walk up to the guy, they'll check your bank, they'll get you a line of credit. You buy the car, they'll take care of the title and stuff right there, and then you go and have it shipped home. You don't even leave the building.
Okay, they can't title it in Georgia then, can they?
Oh, they take care of it. They take care of everything. They know what they're doing, these guys. Sure. You don't have to do
it's
a
a
thing.
whole separate business. It's a title service.
Yeah, they do it right there, and all of the transport companies have representatives sitting have booths at the auction. I mean, it's amazing. It's a huge business. I don't know how much, and you'll find out. Like, we'll just pick Barrett Jackson. How much money? It's interesting to see if you look at some of the websites. After this is over, any of these auctions, they will tell you what the total sales were. Mm-hmm. If you look at Hemmings, there'll be stories in here about the total sales, how many millions went through this place.
And sports car market.
Yeah.
Too.
That's so, but just be a little cautious. You know, auctions serve a purpose, but they're it's not cheap, and it's easy to get caught up. And again, if you're a seller, check your placement of where your car is. Because if it's at 9:00 Saturday night, the high bid is $4.37.
Well,
and that's a call-in.
Yeah.
That's a call-in.
Yeah, there's a lot of gamesmanship to this stuff.
Well, and in a sense, and I'm not saying it's this, but in a sense, it's like being a good poker player.
Yes, it is very much so.
You know?
And like Jim keeps saying, watch Wayne Carini. I've seen it many times. He brings a car and he loses substantial amounts of money if it's a no reserve.
Well, and the other is Keith Martin's Sports Car Market Monthly Magazine. Read it. You have to educate yourself.
Yeah, before you play. It's not a game for just walk in and say, sell my Austin Ely 3000.
Yeah.
But you have to use that as an example.
Well, there's a lot of cars that go up and down drastically. Like 55, 6, and 7 Chevys 5 years ago are $150,000. Now they're lucky if they're 50. Porsche cars, early 911s and 912s, you couldn't give them away.
Now they're through the roof.
Ferraris, 308 Ferraris. I almost bought one, but he talked me out of it. They were under 20,000. Now they're around 75 to 100. Yeah. And then now they're starting to come down. It's a constant up and down and up and down.
You never know. You just
like he hit it. Educate yourself. Buyer, seller, beware.
Yeah.
But they do serve a purpose. They really do. And if I were picking, if I had a list of 10 people or companies that clubs that have done the most for this hobby in the past 20 years, I would put Barrett Jackson on that list.
Yeah.
There's no doubt what they have done for this hobby. You can't fault them for what they've done.
And Dana Beacom.
Well, folks, we have run out of time. It's time to put the
plug in the jug
and get out of here and get ready for next week. Get ready for the rain today. And I don't think any of the three of us will melt. So we'll be back.
All right. See you later.
Be back. Yep. I will be running.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.